The morning sun cast soft light over the clearing outside the new cave, its rays filtering through the pines and illuminating the rocky walls that sheltered the clan. As they moved about, assessing the area, a sense of cautious relief permeated the group. Each member of the clan recognized the unique protection the cliffs offered, their natural walls making it difficult for intruders to stumble upon them. It felt, for the first time in days, like a place where they could breathe a little easier. Omaki surveyed the cave entrance. Her eyes narrowed in concentration as she mentally mapped out the safest arrangement for the clan's essential spaces. The main living area would be situated deeper within, where the light was dim but ample for privacy and warmth. Gathering spots for shared meals and discussions would be kept closer to the front. Meanwhile, they would take turns acting as lookouts, posting near the edges of their new territory, their presence serving as the first line of defense against any possible intruders. "Micah, can you organize a team to clear the entrance and set up wind barriers?" Omaki called, her voice carrying with quiet authority. "The air is sharp here. We'll need those barriers to keep the warmth inside the cave." Micah nodded, rallying the younger clan members to help with the task. They began gathering stones and fallen branches to construct low walls and natural partitions at the entrance, their arrangement strategic to break the wind while blending seamlessly into the surroundings. The clan moved carefully, keeping noise and visibility to a minimum as they worked. Meanwhile, Asha, Koda, and Koda took on the task of setting up a lookout system. They climbed the cliffs that bordered the cave, choosing high, natural perches that provided unobstructed views of the valley below. From these positions, any approach by humans or other potential threats would be visible long before they drew near. Koda, weighed down by his recent encounter with the drone, worked with a solemn diligence that did not go unnoticed. "Are you all right, Koda?" Asha asked as they secured their positions with natural footholds and vines, ensuring they could climb back down easily and without leaving traces. Koda paused, his gaze lingering on the forest stretching endlessly below. "I keep thinking about what happened back there. I should have been more careful. Son, we all make mistakes. What matters is that you're here now, helping keep the clan safe. We're stronger for it." Koda managed a small nod, his expression softening with gratitude. Together they continued their work, setting up a silent alert system using carefully arranged stones and leaves that would rustle or clatter with the slightest disturbance, allowing them to signal the clan quickly if anything approached. As the clan settled into their new environment, routines began to emerge that anchored them to their new surroundings. Micah and Rayla took on the task of mapping the nearby area, cataloging edible plants, herbs, and small game trails. The abundance of resources reassured them that they would survive through the winter months, yet the knowledge of being close to human paths meant they gathered quietly and efficiently, never straying too far from the cliffs. Paka organized regular foraging expeditions to gather berries, nuts, and medicinal herbs. He learned how to conceal his tracks, to leave no signs of their presence. Every move was calculated, every action taken with the understanding that discovery would mean an end to their sanctuary. One afternoon, as Paka and Micah made their way deeper into the forest to collect wild onions, she noticed a small footprint left by one of the clan. She quickly erased it with a sweep of her hand, her gaze serious as she addressed the group once they returned to the cave. "We leave no trace," she reminded them, her voice steady. "Every footprint, every broken branch could be a message to those who wish to harm us. We move like shadows in the forest." Everyone nodded solemnly. The younger generation was learning quickly, adapting to the realities of their new life with a resilience that reassured the elders. The long, quiet evenings inside the cave brought a sense of closeness that the clan hadn't experienced in some time. Gathered around low-burning fires, they shared stories and laughter, each moment a reminder of their shared bonds and the trust that held them together. The presence of the cliffs and the secluded river nearby gave them a degree of comfort, yet they knew that their vigilance could never waver. Adenoa sat apart from the main group one evening, his gaze fixed on the cave's entrance as though expecting something to approach from the darkness beyond. His mind wandered to the memories of his family's last days, haunted by the feeling of vulnerability he had carried ever since. But as he looked around at the clan members who now surrounded him, he felt a deep sense of responsibility and purpose. This was his family now, and he would do whatever it took to keep them safe. Omaki, noticing his quiet isolation, approached him, lowering herself to sit beside him. "You look troubled, Adenoa," she said, her voice soft yet filled with concern. He hesitated, then nodded. "Sometimes I think we're fooling ourselves. The humans, they don't stop. They don't forget." He looked at her, his gaze intense. "But this time, I won't let them take anyone from me. Not again. You've been through more than any of us, Adenoa, and your strength keeps us safe. But we must remember why we're here. Because we want to live, not just survive. Our vigilance will keep us hidden, but our connections, our shared purpose, that's what will keep us alive." Adenoa looked down, her words slowly sinking in. He knew she was right, that his fears, while valid, should not rob him of the peace they all deserved to find. He nodded, a small gesture of acceptance, allowing himself to believe that this new sanctuary might indeed be a place of safety. With each passing day, the clan's routine solidified, and a sense of normalcy began to return. Yet reminders of their need for caution were woven into each task, each movement outside the protection of the cave. Asha and Koda continued their lookout shifts, rotating with the others to ensure that someone was always watching, ready to alert the clan at the first sign of danger. During a quiet moment on one of his shifts, Koda watched as a hawk circled above, its shadow gliding across the valley below. He marveled at how it remained invisible until the moment it swooped down, striking its prey with precision and silence. The bird became a symbol for him, a reminder that to survive, the clan needed to become as elusive as the hawk, hidden until the moment they chose to be seen. As he kept his eyes on the horizon, he whispered to himself, "We will stay hidden like you. We will remain out of reach." In the evenings, Omaki continued to gather the clan around, sharing stories and reinforcing the importance of their bond. Each tale she told reminded them of their resilience, of their ability to thrive no matter the odds. She spoke of ancestors who had traversed great distances to find safety, who had survived wars and natural disasters, all with the same resolve that now guided them. "We are stronger than we know," she would say, her eyes shining with quiet pride. "As long as we stand together, we are unstoppable." These gatherings strengthened the clan's resolve, solidifying the understanding that each of them played a crucial role in their survival. It was not just about hiding or escaping discovery. It was about creating a life filled with meaning, where every moment mattered. Meanwhile, back with the Stone Ridge and Riverbend clans, Eric and Varro carried the memory of their farewell with them as they resumed their lives. They could feel the distance from their family as a physical ache, yet their decision to stay with Cora and Rena was fortified by the knowledge that they were helping to protect their clan in a different way. Each day they shared the stories of their own clan struggles with their new families, urging them to remain cautious and respectful of the boundaries between their lives and the human world. One evening, as they sat around with Cora and Rena, Eric shared a memory of his last night in the cave, his voice filled with nostalgia. "There's something about the way we lived back then that I'll always carry with me. The unity, the understanding that each of us mattered. Here, it's different, but that connection is something I hope we'll build too." Rena took his hand, her expression filled with admiration. "We'll create that unity, Eric, but we'll do it here, together. And with every step forward, we honor what you've left behind." Cora placed her hand over Varro's, her gaze filled with quiet determination. "Your journey is our journey now. We'll protect this life we're building together, and we'll keep each other safe." As the night deepened, Eric and Varro felt a sense of peace settle over them, the knowledge that they could honor their past while embracing their new lives. Though the separation from their clan weighed heavily on them, they knew their vigilance and love would continue to guide them all. The dawn light was muted, soft shadows spilling over the rugged terrain as Eric and Rena made their way through a dense grove of trees. The air was crisp and filled with the familiar scents of pine and earth, but there was something else beneath it, a faint, acrid smell that lingered in the air. Smoke. Eric paused, his senses sharpening as he scanned the horizon. The subtle aroma of burning wood mixed with the crisp morning air, an unnatural presence in the forest. His pulse quickened, and he glanced at Rena, who had noticed it too, her gaze distant and alert. "Do you smell it?" she whispered, her tone laced with concern. Eric nodded, his jaw set. Humans. They're nearby. They continued onward in silence, ears tuned to the sounds around them, each step careful and measured. Soon, the faint hum of engines echoed through the forest, growing louder as they drew closer. The unnatural sound grated against the tranquility of the woods, a jarring intrusion that set both their nerves on edge. This was not the first time they had heard humans encroaching upon their territory, but the persistence of the noise and the smoke suggested that this was more than just passing hikers. Later that morning, they met up with Varro and Cora, who had taken a different path to survey the surrounding area. Varro's expression was tense as he looked at Eric, confirming what they both feared. "They're pushing farther in every day," Varro said, casting a wary glance at the distant ridges. "And it's not just one or two campers. I saw at least 3 separate fires smoldering in the valley." Cora crossed her arms, her eyes flashing with anger and concern. "They're relentless. It's as if they know we're here, as if they're seeking us out." The 4 of them exchanged a look, each feeling the weight of the unspoken threat. This wasn't an ordinary intrusion. The humans were persistent, methodical, and relentless in their pursuit. And the signs all pointed to one grim possibility. The humans were hunting something, or someone, specific. "We should warn the clans," Rena said finally, her voice steady. "Everyone needs to know just how close they're getting." Eric nodded, his expression hardening with resolve. "We need to prepare for whatever comes next. This isn't the time for us to be caught off guard." By midday, both the Stone Ridge and Riverbend clans had gathered in their respective council clearings, leaders and scouts discussing what was becoming an increasingly urgent situation. Eric and Varro, along with Rena and Cora, presented their findings, detailing the presence of the humans, their fires, and the unmistakable sound of engines. The Stone Ridge elders listened closely, their faces grim and contemplative. Mira, an elder known for her cautious nature, spoke first, her gaze steady as she addressed the group. "This land has always been our home," Mira said, her voice laced with quiet defiance. "But we cannot ignore the signs. If the humans are actively seeking us, we must consider every option, including the possibility of relocating." Cora stepped forward, her voice calm yet strong. "Relocation may not be enough. These humans aren't just wandering through. They're organized, equipped, and determined. We need to think defensively, to set up barriers and ways to evade them if they get too close." At Riverbend, similar sentiments arose, though the tension was punctuated by a fierce resolve to defend their territory. One of the younger hunters, Rake, voiced a more aggressive opinion. "We can't hide forever," Rake said, his tone heated. "If they're coming for us, then maybe it's time we show them we're not to be trifled with." Rena placed a calming hand on his shoulder. "We mustn't underestimate their strength. The humans have weapons and technology we can't match. Attacking them directly would only bring more of them." Varro backed her up, recounting the warnings his family had given him and Eric before their separation. "I know it's difficult, but we have to think of survival first. Our goal is to keep the clan safe, not to seek conflict. We'll prepare to defend ourselves if it comes to that, but we must avoid drawing attention." The 2 clans ultimately reached a consensus to begin preparing defenses while remaining as hidden as possible. Their goal would be to evade detection, setting up strategies to mislead the humans and keep their sanctuaries concealed. But despite their unity, an undercurrent of fear and tension rippled through the clans as they braced for what seemed to be an inevitable clash. Determined to understand the humans' tactics, Eric and Varro set out the next day with 2 other scouts, Jarek from Stone Ridge and Celia from Riverbend. Their mission was to observe the encampments from a safe distance, gathering any information that might help the clans avoid detection. The 4 of them moved in silence, blending into the shadows as they crept closer to where the humans had set up camp. From their vantage point on a ridge overlooking the valley, They could see rows of tents and vehicles, some of them marked with insignia that suggested a formal organization. Equipment was laid out in meticulous order: maps, portable devices, and rows of strange instruments. One man in particular, clad in tactical gear, gestured to a map, explaining something to the others. His movements were precise, his demeanor suggesting a seasoned leader. Around him, others listened intently, nodding as he gave instructions. The sight sent a shiver down Eric's spine. This was no casual group of enthusiasts. These people were prepared, systematic, and well organized. "Look at their equipment," Varro whispered, his face grim. "They've got everything: tracking devices, communication tools, even drones." Jarek shook his head in disbelief. "They're more prepared than I feared. If they're this organized, they won't stop until they've found what they're looking for." Eric's gaze hardened as he watched the humans, his mind racing. He knew they had to act quickly. Every day that passed meant the humans were one step closer to discovering their people, one step closer to shattering the peace they had tried so hard to preserve. "We need to report this back to the clans," Eric whispered. "They need to understand just how serious this is." With a final wary glance at the encampment below, the scouts turned and retreated into the forest, their movement silent and swift as they returned to deliver their grim findings. Upon hearing the scouts' report, the Stone Ridge and Riverbend clans wasted no time in strengthening their defenses. Leaders from both clans worked together to set up escape routes through the densest parts of the forest, pathways concealed by natural foliage that would allow them to retreat quickly if needed. Cora and Rena, alongside other skilled gatherers, took charge of preparing supplies for an emergency. They stored herbs, dried foods, and other essentials in hidden caches throughout the forest, each one marked subtly so that only the clans would know their locations. Their preparations were quiet yet thorough, each cache carefully concealed to avoid detection. Varro and Eric, meanwhile, coordinated with the scouts to establish silent communication systems, signals made from bird calls or patterns of stones that would alert clan members if the humans drew too close. The signals were simple but effective, and they hoped they would allow them to stay one step ahead. During one of these preparations, Cora glanced at Varro, her eyes filled with determination. "We faced hardships before, but this feels different." Varro nodded, his jaw set with resolve. "It is different, but we have each other, and that's something the humans can't take from us. As long as we're united, we'll endure." Rena, overhearing their conversation, placed a hand on Eric's shoulder. "This won't break us. If anything, it's only made us stronger." Eric looked at her, his face softening despite the tension. "Then we hold fast, no matter what comes. We won't give them what they want." Days passed, and the clans adapted to their new routines, every member vigilant and prepared for whatever might come. Yet the signs of the humans' presence grew more constant, the roar of ATVs echoing through the valleys, the scent of smoke lingering on the breeze. Each night, the clans waited in tense anticipation, braced for the moment when the humans would draw close enough to confront. Late one evening, as the sounds of engines grew loud in the distance, Eric and Varro climbed to one of the lookout points on a nearby ridge. From there, they could see a faint glow on the horizon, evidence of the humans' fires burning through the night. The sight filled them with a grim determination, a reminder of the sacrifices they had made to protect their families and the lives they had chosen to build. Cora joined them, her face drawn but resolute. She placed a hand on Varro's arm, her voice steady. "No matter what happens, we'll face it together." Rena, standing beside Eric, added softly, "We're stronger than they realize, and we're more connected to this land than they'll ever be." The four of them stood in silence, their eyes fixed on the distant fires, their hearts filled with a shared determination. They would protect their people, their home, and each other, no matter the cost. In the depths of the forest, the clans waited, united and unyielding, prepared to defend their sanctuary against the encroaching threat. The tension in the air was thick, an unspoken promise that, if forced, they would fight for the lives they had built, even in the face of an unstoppable force. The forest was still under the light of a waning moon, shadows stretching long across the ground, as two juvenile members of the Riverbend clan, Kalen and Darek crept along the tree line near a human campsite. The scent of smoke and cooked food wafted through the air, unfamiliar yet oddly enticing, drawing them in despite the stern warnings from their elders. Kalen crouched low, his eyes gleaming with excitement as he observed the humans gathered around their fire, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. Darek shifted beside him, barely able to contain his eagerness. "They're just sitting there, completely unaware," Darek whispered. "Let's make them remember tonight," Kalen replied with a mischievous grin. And without hesitation, he broke a few low branches, placing them deliberately near the trail that led away from the campsite. The snapping sounds echoed through the stillness, catching the attention of one of the men. Encouraged by the reaction, Kalen threw a small stone that landed near the edge of the campfire, earning a startled exclamation from one of the humans. Darek chuckled quietly, his confidence growing as he began to make low, howling sounds, followed by quick, rhythmic mouth pops. The humans sat up, visibly uneasy, their heads darting around as they searched for the source of the sounds. But just as the juveniles were preparing to slip away, the humans pulled out flashlights, high-powered beams that sliced through the dark, illuminating the tree line with a brightness that made Kalen and Darek freeze. These were not ordinary flashlights. The light was far more powerful than anything they had seen before. The beams swept over them, and for a heartbeat, Kalen and Darek found themselves exposed, their forms briefly visible in the light. The realization hit them like a thunderclap. The humans could see them. "Run," Kalen hissed, his voice taut with panic as he shoved Darek toward the shadows. The two juveniles sprinted away, their hearts pounding as they ducked and weaved through the trees, the distant sound of shouting and more lights chasing them until they were finally enveloped by the forest's darkness. By morning, word of the juveniles' encounter had spread through the Riverbend clan, igniting a wave of fear and frustration. The elders were furious, scolding Kalen and Darek for their recklessness, while others in the clan whispered anxiously about the humans' increasing vigilance. What had started as a harmless prank had now escalated into a potential threat to their survival. One of the Riverbend leaders, Kalina, gathered the clan members for an emergency meeting, her expression severe as she addressed the group. "The humans are closer than we realized," she began, her tone grim. "And Kalen and Darek's actions may have put us all at risk. We cannot afford to be careless, not when the safety of our entire clan is at stake." Kalen, still feeling the sting of embarrassment, looked down, ashamed. Darek, though remorseful, felt the injustice of the blame weighing on him. "We were just having fun," he said, though his voice held little conviction. "There is no room for fun when our safety is in question," Kalina replied sharply. "The humans now have proof of our presence, and they won't stop until they find more evidence. This may bring a wave of new dangers, not just for us, but for all clans nearby." Her words hung in the air, sobering the group as they absorbed the weight of the situation. The decision was clear. They would need to reinforce their vigilance, to watch for signs of human activity, and be prepared to leave if necessary. The following day, leaders from Stone Ridge, Riverbend, and a neighboring clan, Mistwood, gathered for a council meeting. The clans had shared the forest in peace for generations, bound by mutual respect and an unspoken alliance to protect one another from external threats. But the recent human activity had introduced a new strain, forcing them to confront the possibility of a threat that could affect them all. Eric and Varro attended on behalf of their clan, their faces etched with worry as they relayed the details of the juveniles' encounter. Rena and Cora stood by their sides, lending their support as the leaders listened intently. "Kalen and Darek's actions were reckless," Mira, an elder from Stone Ridge, said sternly, her eyes fixed on the Riverbend leader. "But we cannot let their mistake define our response. We must remain united in our approach." A voice from the Mistwood clan, Lorik, interjected, his tone bristling with anger. "United. The humans are advancing with each passing day, and their persistence grows stronger. How do we know that hiding will keep us safe forever?" "We don't," Rena replied, her voice steady and calm. "But attacking them would be equally reckless. The humans have resources and technology we can't match. If we escalate, they'll only respond with greater force." A murmur of agreement rippled through the group, though some members remained visibly conflicted, their expressions a mix of anger and fear. After much discussion, the leaders agreed to intensify their surveillance and to establish a series of emergency protocols for each clan to follow in case the humans encroached too close. The decision brought little comfort, but it was all they could do for now. Their unity, though tested, held strong under the pressure of a shared danger. In the days that followed, the presence of humans in the forest grew more pronounced. The clans soon noticed that the humans had begun using even more sophisticated equipment: tracking devices, night vision goggles, thermal imaging, and search dogs. It was clear that the humans were now operating with the belief that they were on the trail of something significant, something worth every ounce of effort. Cora, who had gone on a scouting mission with Rena and Varro, witnessed one such patrol from a concealed perch high in the trees. The humans moved in organized formations, their voices low but purposeful as they followed a carefully mapped route. "They're looking for something specific," Rena whispered, watching the humans as they moved below. "It's almost as if they're tracking us." Varro clenched his fists, his face filled with frustration. "If they keep pushing, they'll eventually find us. We're running out of options." The sight of the humans' relentless search filled them with a renewed urgency, and they returned to their clans with a growing sense of dread. The knowledge that the humans had increased their efforts created a tense atmosphere. Each clan member acutely aware that a single mistake could bring disaster upon them all. As the humans continued their push into the forest, the clans braced for the worst, each clan leader implementing strict routines to protect their members and prepare for an emergency escape if needed. They set up hidden routes deep into the forest, paths so twisted and concealed that only those who knew the terrain intimately could navigate them safely. Eric, Varro, Rena, and Cora played a crucial role in coordinating these preparations, guiding members through the escape paths and drilling them on silent signals that would alert them if the humans drew too near. The focus on teamwork and trust helped ease the rising tension, each member knowing that their survival depended on the strength of their bonds. Cora, watching her clan move through the routines with stoic determination, felt a swell of pride mixed with fear. "We may be few, but we're strong," she whispered to Varro, who stood beside her. Varro took her hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "And together, we're unbreakable." Despite the ever-present threat, a quiet resilience began to settle over the clans. They were ready to face whatever came next, fortified by their unity and an unyielding resolve to protect each other. The final escalation came on a foggy evening, when scouts from Stone Ridge and Riverbend, stationed along the forest's edge, spotted humans moving in a formation far closer than ever before. This time, they were equipped with search dogs, their powerful flashlights piercing through the darkness as they advanced in a relentless march. Eric and Varro, alerted by a quick signal from the scouts, moved to the forest's edge, their hearts pounding as they realized how close the humans had come. The air was thick, each breath laden with the knowledge that a single misstep could reveal their presence. One of the dogs caught a scent, its bark echoing through the trees, and the humans turned, their flashlights aimed in the scout's direction. Eric exchanged a look with Varro, their eyes filled with a shared understanding. This was it. They had run out of time. As they slipped back into the shadows to warn the others, a decision loomed over them, heavy and unavoidable. They could stay and risk discovery, hoping their defenses would hold, or they could abandon their sanctuary, journeying deeper into the wilderness in search of a new home beyond the reach of humans. In that moment, they knew that whatever they chose, their lives would never be the same. The days following Kalen and Darek's encounter with the humans felt like an unwelcome awakening, the entire forest alive with the undercurrent of a restless pursuit. Eric and Varro, along with Rena and Cora, observed from a hidden ridge as the humans moved with renewed purpose, sweeping deeper into the heart of Stone Ridge and Riverbend territory. Each day their numbers seemed to increase, new equipment, search dogs, and the hum of drones patrolling the skies. Eric watched a group of humans set up a new camp not far from the edge of Stone Ridge territory. Their voices carried across the clearing as they prepared for yet another day of searching, their excitement palpable. To the humans, the forest was a mystery to be solved, each citing a hint of something rare and elusive. To the clans, however, it was a living home, one whose peace was slowly being shattered. "They're not slowing down," Varro said beside Eric. His eyes narrowed. "It's like they've caught a scent they can't let go of." Eric nodded, his mind racing with possible solutions. The humans were close, too close, and every instinct told him that if something wasn't done soon, the entire territory would be compromised. He looked over at Rena and Cora, whose expressions mirrored his own sense of urgency. "We have to warn the others," Eric said finally. "If they continue like this, it won't be long before they're pushing into every part of our territory." Varro's face grew grim as he nodded in agreement. "We can't handle this alone, and if it comes to it—" He hesitated, then continued, "We might have to face them directly." Eric didn't answer, but the look in his eyes conveyed his understanding. They were standing on the precipice of something far bigger than a simple territorial dispute. If the humans continued their advance, confrontation was inevitable. Later that evening, Eric gathered a small group from his new clan, calling aside a young scout named Lyra. She was one of the most skilled juveniles in Stone Ridge, swift and clever, and he knew she could deliver the message with precision and urgency. "Lyra, I need you to take a message to my mother," he began, his tone somber. "Omaki and the others are in the mountains. Tell her the humans have intensified their search. They've come dangerously close to our borders, and they're advancing with every passing day." Lyra nodded, her face a picture of determination, as she absorbed the gravity of the task. "I'll reach them quickly, Eric," she promised. "They'll know by tomorrow." He placed a hand on her shoulder, offering her a reassuring nod. "Be careful. Don't let the humans see you. Take the highest trails, the least worn paths, and stay hidden." With a final nod, Lyra turned and slipped into the shadows, disappearing into the forest as she began her journey toward the mountains. Eric watched her go, a sense of foreboding settling over him. There was no certainty in the path ahead, only a faint hope that the message would reach his family in time. The sun had barely risen when Lyra arrived at the edge of the high mountain cave where Omaki and her clan had taken refuge. Her arrival stirred the morning quiet, and within moments, Omaki, Koda, Asha, and the rest of the clan had gathered around her, sensing that her unexpected visit was not a casual one. Omaki's face grew tense as she listened to Lyra's message, the news of the humans' persistence striking a nerve. They had thought themselves safe in these remote heights, far from the reach of human curiosity. But the sighting of Kalen and Darek had rekindled the humans' search, their tenacity pushing them farther and farther into the wilderness. "Eric wanted me to warn you," Lyra concluded, her voice steady despite her fatigue. "He says the humans are getting closer by the day, and they're coming with more determination than ever." Omaki exchanged a worried glance with Asha, her mind racing with possible plans. "We'll need to decide quickly," she said. "If they're closing in, we may have to prepare to move again. Or worse, prepare to defend ourselves." Adenoa, who had listened intently, felt a familiar anger stirring within him. Memories of his family's last days returned with a sharp clarity, his hatred for the humans mingling with a new resolve. He couldn't stand by while the clans he had come to respect faced such a threat. Rising, he approached Omaki, his voice low and filled with purpose. "I'm going with her," he said, his gaze unwavering. "If the clans are in danger, I need to be there to help protect them. This isn't a threat we can ignore." Omaki's expression softened as she met his gaze, recognizing the resolve in his eyes. She knew of his past, the pain he had endured at the hands of humans, and she understood his desire to stand with those who now faced a similar danger. "You don't have to do this alone, Adenoa," she said gently. "But if you feel this is what you must do, then go with our blessing. Help them as you would help us." With a final nod, Adenoa turned to Lyra. "Lead the way." As Adenoa and Lyra began their descent, the gravity of his decision weighed on him. This was more than a matter of protecting the clans. It was a chance to confront the darkness that had haunted him for years. The loss of his family to human violence was a scar that had never healed, a wound that had festered as he watched his new family struggle to survive. But there was more to his choice than anger. As he moved down the mountain, Each step brought him closer to the realization that his return was not merely for revenge, but to safeguard a future for those he had come to call his own. Lyra moved swiftly ahead of him, navigating the rocky terrain with ease. As they traversed narrow paths and descended through dense thickets, Adenoa's resolve only grew. He had learned from his past, and he would not allow these humans to take another family from him. "Almost there," Lyra whispered as they neared the edge of Stone Ridge territory. The sight of familiar landmarks comforted Adenoa, reminding him that he was not alone in this fight. The journey back to the clan's territory was fraught with tension. Every sound seemed amplified, each rustling leaf or distant call a reminder of the ever-present threat. Adenoa's eyes scanned the surroundings, his senses sharpened by years of survival. Memories of his family's last days flashed through his mind, but he pushed them aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. As they descended further, he thought of Eric, Varro, and the others who would be waiting for his arrival. He knew his presence would bring them some comfort, a reassurance that they were not alone in facing the danger that loomed over them. But he also knew that this time, their survival might depend on more than just evasion. They might have to stand their ground. Lyra glanced back at him, her expression a mixture of respect and curiosity. "I've heard stories about you, Adenoa. About what happened to your family." Adenoa nodded, his voice quiet. "I was only a youngster then, but I learned that humans don't understand what they can't control. They'll stop at nothing to capture what they seek, and if they see us as a threat, they won't show mercy." She held his gaze, the weight of his words settling over her. "Then we'll be ready, whatever it takes." By the time they reached the main Stone Ridge gathering area, night had fallen, casting long shadows over the trees. Eric, Varro, Rena, Cora, and other clan members had assembled, their faces a mix of relief and apprehension as they welcomed Adenoa. Eric approached him, clasping his arm in a gesture of solidarity. "I knew you'd come," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "We're facing something we can't evade alone." Adenoa nodded, his gaze sweeping over the assembled group. "Then we face it together. We'll protect our home and each other, whatever comes." The clan spent the next hours discussing their strategy, coordinating defenses, and establishing signals for an evacuation if it became necessary. Adenoa and Varro led small groups to set up natural barriers, while Rena and Cora distributed supplies to ensure that everyone was prepared for the possibility of a prolonged stand. As dawn approached, the clans were united in purpose, their collective resolve solidified by Adenoa's return. They had seen too much, lost too much, to allow fear to rule them. They would protect each other and their home, standing strong against a force that sought to dismantle their way of life. The quiet of the early morning was filled with anticipation as they prepared for what lay ahead, their unity a powerful defense against the looming threat. And as the first light touched the trees, they braced themselves for whatever the day might bring, knowing that this time they would not be driven from their land without a fight. The day began with an unremarkable quiet, a typical foraging trip for the Stone Ridge juveniles, Kaylin, Jarek, and Lyra. Each of them had grown accustomed to gathering food and herbs, moving with ease among the familiar trees as they identified plants they could bring back to the clan. Birds chirped overhead, and the soft crunch of leaves underfoot was almost rhythmic as they bent and reached, stuffing their satchels with roots and berries. But the drone watching them was a disruption, a threat that lingered above, a technology they couldn't hear or sense, yet one that marked their every move. The high-tech device drifted like a dark shadow through the morning mist, its unblinking lens capturing their forms, broadcasting back their movements to the humans it served. Jarek had been telling Kaylin a story, his voice quiet as they walked through a densely wooded area. Lyra, with her keen senses, paused mid-step, glancing back as a flicker of movement above caught her eye. But the clouds covered the drone, and the disturbance went unnoticed, fading into the canopy of trees. They laughed and whispered, unaware that their footprints, their faces, their every step were being recorded and tracked. By the time they reached the familiar markers of Stone Ridge territory, the drone had already locked onto their route and location, slipping away only after marking their final position. Within minutes, the drone had returned to the human encampment, carrying with it the evidence needed to launch a calculated attack. At the human command center below, a palpable energy filled the air as operatives studied the drone footage. Each screen showed the juveniles from Stone Ridge, their movements preserved in pixelated detail, their features etched onto the minds of the humans watching. They were no longer just rumors or mysterious figures. These were tangible, living beings. And for the humans who had spent weeks searching, this was a discovery worthy of celebration. The lead operative, a man named Carson, addressed his team with a calm yet intense focus. "We have their location," he began, pointing to the screens. "This is the opportunity we've been waiting for. We'll move in quietly, and we'll take one alive if we can. Any resistance, neutralize it." The operatives, clad in tactical gear and armed with tranquilizers, rifles, and tracking devices, moved in silence as they prepared. Their faces were set in determination, eyes cold and calculating. They didn't see their targets as beings with lives and families. They were simply rare specimens, worthy of capture. The team deployed quickly, moving in pairs as they entered the forest with practiced ease, navigating trails and ridges as they closed in on the Stone Ridge clan. The men and women communicated through earpieces, their voices low as they coordinated movements and double-checked the terrain. The only sound was the quiet hum of technology as their thermal imaging devices scanned the ground ahead, ensuring that no trace was left undetected. The scout who returned to Stone Ridge brought an urgency that rippled through the clan like a wildfire. Members looked up from their tasks, children were ushered away, and the elders exchanged glances filled with worry as they processed the news. Humans were approaching. Eric's voice rang out, calm but forceful, as he gathered the clan together, explaining the situation in concise, urgent words. Rena stood beside him, her face pale but resolute. Her hand found Eric's as he spoke, their silent bond a source of strength amidst the rising fear. "We need everyone's help," Eric declared, scanning the faces of his people. "Those who can fight, prepare yourselves. The rest, stay out of sight and watch over the young ones. We don't know what we're up against, but we'll protect our home, no matter what." Cora joined Rena, gathering the young and elderly members, leading them to a hidden nook within the deeper part of the forest. She whispered soothing words to the children, assuring them that they were safe, her tone filled with a calm authority that belied the fear in her eyes. In the gathering shadows, warriors from both Stone Ridge and Riverbend prepared in solemn silence, arming themselves with sharpened rocks and improvised weapons, knowing that these were no match for the humans' technology but resolved to fight nonetheless. Each clan member took a moment to look around, connecting with the family and friends who had become their lifeline, finding courage in the faces they had known their whole lives. Adenoa was the last to join, stepping forward as the clans arranged themselves, his towering figure a steady presence. "This is our home," he said, his voice carrying through the trees. "And today, we fight for it." The humans advanced with chilling precision, their eyes sweeping over the undergrowth as they moved. Then, without warning, the first clash broke out. A Stone Ridge scout hurled a rock that hit one of the men's helmet, sending him staggering back. It was the signal that ignited the battle. Members of Stone Ridge and Riverbend surged forward, their movement swift and calculated, using the thick trees for cover as they closed the distance. Bullets cracked through the air, a sound that shattered the forest's tranquility. Bark splintered as rounds tore through the trees, sending shards scattering. Clan members darted forward, grabbing branches to disorient their enemies, ducking and weaving as they attempted to strike back with rocks and the occasional sharpened branch. But the humans were prepared. They fired with brutal efficiency, targeting clan members who came too close. Their tranquilizers mixed with lethal rounds as they strove to subdue the clans without wiping them out entirely. Some members fell, their bodies slumping as tranquilizers took effect, while others dropped silently to the ground, never to rise again. In the midst of the chaos, Adenoa led a charge that struck fear into the humans. His powerful form, breaking through their ranks as he swung a branch with a force that sent two of the intruders stumbling back. His roar was one of defiance, a challenge that resounded through the forest as he rallied his people. Eric and Varro fought side by side, using every tactic they had learned to disrupt the human forces. They aimed to damage the humans' equipment, breaking equipment and seizing radios in a desperate attempt to throw them off balance. But for every small victory, the clan suffered a loss. The sight of fallen friends, the sound of wounded cries, tore at their spirits, yet they pressed on, unwilling to give an inch to the enemy that sought to destroy them. Amidst the melee, Adenoa became the primary target. The humans, realizing his strength and leadership, deployed a strange, high-powered weapon that seemed designed specifically for him. A dart struck him in the shoulder, the sedative flooding his system almost instantly. Adenoa staggered, his vision swimming as he felt his strength drain away, his limbs growing heavy and unresponsive. He struggled to stay upright, his gaze meeting those of his fellow clan members as they continued to battle around him. He saw their desperation, their determination, and he felt the pain of failure as his knees hit the ground. The men moved in quickly, using a large piece of heavy equipment to clamp onto Adenoa's limp form, lifting him from the ground with an almost mechanical indifference. Clan members screamed in horror as they watched him, helpless, being lifted onto the back of a massive truck. He lay motionless, his vision darkening. The last sounds he heard the anguished cries of his people. Varro, seeing Adenoa's capture, let out a primal scream and surged forward, heedless of his own safety. He swung at the humans, his strikes wild and desperate, as he attempted to reach his fallen comrade. But a gunshot rang out, and Varro fell, a dark stain spreading across his chest as he collapsed to the ground. Eric, witnessing Varro's fall, let out a strangled cry, running toward his brother's body, only to be held back by Rena, who clutched his arm in desperation. "Eric, no!" she shouted, her voice thick with grief. The humans moved back, retreating as they secured their prize. They had what they came for, and as they withdrew, their faces were filled with a chilling satisfaction. As the sounds of the humans' retreat faded, the clans emerged from the shadows, their expressions filled with shock and despair as they looked upon the battlefield. Bodies lay scattered across the ground, both wounded and dead, each one a painful reminder of what they had sacrificed. Eric knelt beside Varro, his hands shaking as he cradled his brother's lifeless body. His tears fell silently, each one a tribute to the memories they had shared, the dreams they had once harbored. Around him, clan members gathered in mourning, each one weighed down by the enormity of their loss. Rena, her face pale and eyes red-rimmed, as she kneeled next to him. "He fought with everything he had," she whispered, "and so did Adenoa." The clan members were left to grapple with the gravity of their situation. The strongest amongst them was gone, captured and taken away to an unknown fate. Their home had been desecrated, their people wounded, killed and broken. But even as they mourned, a quiet determination began to take root, a resolve to continue, to survive, even in the face of overwhelming odds. They knew now that the world had shifted, that their way of life had been irrevocably altered. The memory of Varro's sacrifice, of Adenoa's capture, would become the force that propelled them forward, uniting them in a common cause. And as they gathered the wounded and prepared to honor the fallen, they braced themselves for the path ahead, a path that would be dark and uncertain, but one they would face together. The morning light was soft, filtering gently through the trees as Omaki, Asha, Koda, and the others went about their daily tasks. A distant cry broke the peaceful silence, carrying with it a note of sorrow that sent a chill through Omaki's heart. She turned quickly, spotting a scout from the Stone Ridge clan making his way toward her, his face shadowed with grief. Omaki's heart tightened as the scout approached, bearing the weight of news that felt heavier than words. His voice was a whisper, laden with sorrow. Varro has fallen, and Adenoa, he was taken. The grief spread through the group like a tangible wave, each member reacting in their own silent agony. Varro's loss struck them like a blow, a wound to the heart of their family, while the knowledge of Adenoa's capture filled them with dread. Varro had been a friend, a guide, a fierce protector, a son, and to think of him gone seemed unthinkable. Asha, her face tight with shock, took a breath as if to steady herself. "He was brave," she said, her eyes distant as she recalled moments spent with Varro, memories now edged with sorrow, always ready to stand up for us all. Micah closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. He was a light to us, even in the darkest moments. To think we've lost him, and that Adanoa may be suffering at their hands. Omaki, her own heart breaking, yet determined to remain strong. We must honor him then. Varro deserves a farewell worthy of the life he gave to us. The clan gathered in silence, preparing to make the journey to the sacred burial grounds, a place known only to the clans, a hidden, revered sanctuary where their ancestors rested, untouched by human eyes. The path to the sacred site was one that every member knew well, though it felt different on this day of mourning. Omaki and her clan moved with quiet purpose, each step a silent testament to their loss. As they walked, memories of Varro filled their hearts, his presence felt in the rustling leaves and cool breeze, as if he walked beside them one final time. Omaki's thoughts drifted to moments with Varro, his easy laughter and unwavering strength. She remembered his patient guidance, his fierce loyalty, and the way he could calm even the wildest of tempers. These memories brought a bittersweet comfort, a reminder of the life he had lived, even as they faced the reality of his absence. Koda, walking close by, broke the silence with a quiet voice. He protected us all, even when the cost was high. Varro was never one to let fear hold him back. Omaki nodded, eyes downcast. His strength is a part of us now, as it was always meant to be. Rayla, normally soft-spoken, shared her own memories. Varro taught me to see the forest not just as a place to live, but as a place to feel and understand. His lessons were as constant as the trees, and I owe him so much of who I am. Koda, his face marked by sorrow and frustration, clenched his fists as he walked. We've lost so much to the humans. First our homes, and now Varro. And Adanoa in their hands. It doesn't feel fair. It isn't fair, Koda, Omaki said. But we must carry on, carrying their strength with us. Today, we honor Varro's life and everything he stood for. Their words hung in the air as they pressed onward, the journey transforming into a pilgrimage of remembrance, each step bringing them closer to a place that held their history, and now would hold Varro's memory as well. By dusk, the clans had gathered in the sacred burial grounds, an ancient grove encircled by towering trees. The air was heavy with reverence as members from Stone Ridge, Red Valley, Riverbend, Mistwood, and Omaki's own clan joined together, each finding their place around Varro's body, which lay wrapped in a ceremonial hide and adorned with herbs and flowers, carefully chosen to honor his spirit. Omaki knelt beside Varro, her hand resting gently on his chest. She closed her eyes, whispering words of farewell, gratitude, and love, asking for his spirit to be safely guided to join their ancestors. Beside her stood Eric, his face pale, eyes filled with unshed tears as he struggled to find the strength to let go of his brother. Marla, leader of the Red Valley clan, stepped forward, holding a bundle of cedar and sage. With steady hands, she lit the bundle, the fragrant smoke rising and swirling above Varro as she began a traditional chant. Her voice was strong and clear, a melody that spoke of protection, remembrance, and the eternal ties that bound their people together. Jarek, the Stone Ridge leader, approached next, placing a stone by Varro's side, a symbol of strength and resilience, his words steady and filled with respect. You were the rock among us, Varro. Your spirit will continue to guide us, and we will carry your strength in our hearts. Tyrek, Riverbend's leader, took a feather and placed it beside Varro's hand. His voice was quiet, but there was a fierce loyalty in his gaze as he spoke. You were the wind that moved us forward, Varro. Your courage was a flame that brightened our darkest days. Laura, Mistwood's leader, moved forward last, her voice soft and reverent as she placed a woven leaf bracelet around Varro's wrist. Your life was woven with ours, Varro. Though you are gone, your spirit remains with us, interwoven in the life we share. One by one, each clan member approached to pay their respects, offering small tokens of remembrance, a stone, a flower, a whispered prayer. The air grew thick with sorrow and reverence as Varro's loved ones honored his spirit, his sacrifice. Finally, Eric knelt beside his brother, his hands trembling as he placed a woven leaf on Varro's chest. "I don't know how to say goodbye," he said, his voice breaking, "but I promise I'll live my life to honor yours, Varro. I'll protect our people, our home, and I'll carry everything you taught me." With a final whisper, Eric bowed his head, and the clans fell silent as they laid Varro to rest, returning him to the sacred ground of his ancestors. Once the burial was complete, the leaders gathered on the edge of the clearing, their faces solemn as they prepared to discuss what lay ahead. Jarek from Stone Ridge, Marla from Red Valley, Tyrek from Riverbend, and Laura from Mistwood joined Omaki, each carrying the weight of their people's hopes, fears, and unspoken grief. Jarek, his voice a low rumble, began the conversation. "This cannot go on as it has. The humans grow bolder with every sighting, and now we've lost Varro and Adenoa. If we stay here, we risk everything." Marla, known for her fierce protectiveness of Red Valley, shook her head. "And where would we go, Jarok? The humans expand their reach daily. No place in these lands is untouched by them. If we flee, it may only postpone the threat, not end it." Tyrek, his face clouded with doubt, added, "But if we fight, we risk more lives. Varro is gone, and Adenoa, who knows what horrors he may face in their hands. Is there a way to stay hidden, to avoid their sight entirely?" Laura's voice was thoughtful, filled with a sorrowful wisdom. "We could try to live more as shadows, using our knowledge of the land to blend with it, to avoid detection. It's a difficult life, but perhaps it's our best hope if we are to remain in these lands." Omaki listened as each leader shared their thoughts, her own heart weighed down by the grief of losing her son and her mate, her mind racing with the knowledge of what staying or leaving would mean for her people. She had guided them through many trials, but now, faced with the relentless human threat, even she was uncertain. "We cannot live forever in fear," she said softly. "But we must also face reality. If we stay, we must become more vigilant, more cautious than ever. But if we leave, we must be certain it's to a place they cannot find." Eric, standing nearby, stepped forward, his voice calm but filled with pain. "Varro wouldn't want us to run in fear. He believed in standing strong and protecting what we have. We owe it to him to find a way to keep our home and our people safe." The leaders exchanged glances, each weighing the risks, the sacrifices, the painful choices that lay before them. Whatever decision they made, it would change the fabric of their lives, testing the strength of their bonds and their ability to protect each other in a world that seemed determined to tear them apart. As dawn began to break, casting a gentle light over the clearing, the clans gathered once more, each leader offering a silent nod of respect to one another, as they prepared to return to their respective territories. The bonds formed during the ceremony felt stronger than ever, binding them in a shared grief and a resolve to honor Varro's memory. Omaki held Eric close, her heart heavy as she whispered to him, "Varro's spirit lives in you, Eric. Carry it with you, let it guide you, and know that you're never alone." Eric nodded, his face resolute even as his heart ached. "I'll make him proud, Mother. I promise you that." Each clan member bid their farewells, moving with a sense of purpose and solidarity as they turned away from the sacred site. They carried with them the strength of their ancestors, the memory of Varro's sacrifice, and the spirit of unity that bound them to each other. As they disappeared into the forest, the silence of the sacred burial grounds remained, a solemn witness to the vows made and the resolve strengthened. They would face the coming days with courage, united by loss, resilience, and the spirit of those who had gone before them.